Good evening and welcome to another exciting episode of the SMG Solar Music Group First Fam Radio Podcast in studio. And we're definitely glad today to have as our guest from 103.7 WVKX, the heart and soul of Middle Georgia, Missy E, the Party Doll.
What up, homie? Woo! Yay!
How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good. I'm Music Matisse, that I'm joined today to entertain and conversate with you by my sidekick, my partner in crime from First Fam Radio,
Mr. First Fam Chill.
This is going to be a good interview today. We're just looking at different ways to develop our podcast, have different conversations with different people in the industry. And a lot of times, people that are behind the scenes, they don't get the shine that they actually deserve. People don't understand that with your music artists and your actors and actresses, you know, for every artist or group that you see, there's probably 15 to 35, 40 people behind them as a support team. So we just wanted to welcome you to this show. We wanted to conversate with you and just give people an insight as far as from another perspective, what actual broadcasting from a female perspective may be like. Where are you originally from?
Well, I'm from Louisiana. A small town called Jonesboro, Louisiana. That's where I was born. But I've been in music for a long time, not radio, but my dad was a musician. So that's how we ended up to New York. I grew up in Freeport, Long Island. And then, I don't know if you want me to go any further, but yeah. Oh, okay. Well, then I went to school at, I kind of jumped some steps. Went to Freeport, Long Island, home of Flavor Flav.
Yes, indeed.
I knew him and his family growing up. But music was always a real important part of our life because my father was a musician. So when he would perform or they would practice at the house when I was younger, I knew people like Wilson Pickett, Junior and the All-Stars. So my dad always had that music around me, and I was so good at music that within the first couple of bars of the song, I could tell you exactly what was playing.
Okay, so you had those ears.
Yeah, so I was that good with music and loved music that much, but I wanted to be a dancer, didn't want to do instruments.
Oh, okay.
So went to Grambling State University. I actually was a dancer. For Grambling State University Orchesis.
Okay.
And continue on. I still teach dance and got into radio by happenstance.
Let me ask you this, and I'm glad you said that. When you went to Grambling, what was your major?
My major was actually social work.
Okay. You had a major in social work. Now, you just said you got into radio by happenstance. How long have you been doing radio?
I've been doing radio for 11, 12 years.
Okay. So this is basically a career for you and one that you've obviously excelled in, holding down the time slot and everything at your station in Georgia. From my perspective, you've done quite well in the field.
Yeah, so, I think so. Yeah.
It definitely seems like it. So my question would be, with your experience now, you've gone to college, but now you're in broadcasting and radio. With podcasting becoming what it is, it's exploded. With satellite radio being the go-to now and terrestrial radio, broadcast radio still being relevant, do you think that a college degree is required to make it in radio and broadcast radio, or to be behind the mic and make a career as a podcaster or a broadcaster on a major station?
I would have to say no, it's not required, because I do work with a lot of people who don't have degrees. Like my mentor at the radio station who actually discovered me, his name is Big George. He passed this past year in November. But he is known for breaking people like the 69 Boys. He was really relevant in this area, and what started off at, I don't know if your fans know about WIBB. the station that broke. Yes,
In Macon?
yes,
Yes.
WIBB.
Mm-hmm.
That's where he was at first, and then he came on, left that station, and came to the station where I was. So a lot of history.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually was talking to me because I'm gonna tell the truth today. I'm gonna
Come
tell
on
the truth.
now. That's fine.
I used to host and promote mail reviews.
Okay.
Good at it. I was good at it.
Okay.
So I was promoting my mail reviews, and we had
Mm-hmm.
to do some commercials over at the station.
Oh.
So Big George called me,
Mm-hmm.
and actually the young lady, her name was DC Diva, and she had the 10 to 3 spot. DC
Okay.
Diva was leaving due to something going on with her family, so she had to leave. And so he called me and he
Mm-hmm.
said, um, I talked to you on the I talked to you on the phone a couple of times, and you have very good diction.
Mm-hmm.
I have a spot opening up here at the station, and I'm wondering if you would be interested in getting into radio. And I was like, me and radio? He said, you have the perfect voice for it. You speak
Mm-hmm.
well, you're elegant. I think you'll do well. And so um, I said, okay, sure. Because I mean, I never thought about radio before, but he
Right.
was like, you can do it. Now he threw me in there.
Mm-hmm. In what way?
he just he showed me one time, and it was like, this is what you do. Come on, Missy. And he was the one that gave me my name. And he was like, come on, Missy. Come on, you can do this.
Now, when you say he showed you one time, are we talking just behind the mic and how to actually talk and when to talk, or did he have you actually running the boards and being behind the mic at the same time?
Okay, so my role is what a lot of people don't know is what a lot of the mainstream radios are going to is voice tracking.
Okay.
So I voice track, and then occasionally I might I know I'm really telling secrets because my
Let it all
fans
hang
think
out.
I'm there. My fans think I'm there 9 to 5 every day, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
not. But the voice tracking, where you have to voice track, make sure you do it in the right way, when to
Mm-hmm.
put the slot in and all of that. So he just kind of threw it to me and said, this is what you do.
I know you had to be at first just like a bundle of nerves.
I was so nervous. I was so nervous.
Mm-hmm.
But I have like a perfectionist spirit.
Right.
So I wanted to make sure I got it right. So I would spend, even though they weren't paying me much,
Mm-hmm.
I was spending hours at the station trying to perfect it. And then it got to the point where I made it so good that
Mm-hmm.
he said, was that a live interview you did the other day with I forgot who it was I did an interview with. Was that a
Mm-hmm.
live interview you did? And I said, no, that was voice track. He said, girl, you good.
Hmm. Oh, I guess he's patting himself on the back saying he made the right
Yeah,
choice.
yeah, yeah,
Wow. Do
yeah.
you remember who your first interview was with?
Oh my goodness. Um, I'm probably gonna say it was like Kanye Doss,
Okay.
neo soul artist, Kanye
Yes.
Doss, or Anthony David, because I
Wow.
started trying to market myself and getting out and
Mm-hmm.
trying to see different people. And I think it was probably one of them because I was different people is like, oh my goodness, let me help you with, linking up with some people. So I think it was a neo soul artist that was
Right.
probably my first.
Okay. Have you
Hmm.
been at the same station your entire time in the business?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Okay.
I've done some things other places, but 103.7, yeah.
Okay. So that's home.
It's home. Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm gonna go for the jugular here. What's the worst mistake you've ever made on the air? The worst experience you've had, whether it was dead air, whether it was even in an interview, if you're doing a live interview, making a mistake, calling an artist the wrong name, talking about having the wrong name for their current project, etc. What's the biggest blunder you had behind the mic? And
I,
how did you recover?
I'm trying to remember. Was it with Dougie Fresh?
Uh-oh.
I was doing an interview with Dougie Fresh, and I would ask artists, if you
Mhm.
had a theme song, what would it be? And he said, I have a theme song. I was like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, you do.
Hmm.
Or with
Hmm.
or with, I don't know if I could talk about this, when I interviewed Casey and JoJo.
Mhm.
It was before they were going to have a concert in Atlanta,
Mhm.
and he was like, I really don't want to talk about Mary J. Blige. And I think we had one conversation, and then he kind of went on about, I said, oh, I didn't open it. I opened that door a little bit, but he kind of said a lot about
Mm.
his relationship with Mary J. Blige. So,
Yeah.
um,
Was most of it like in a negative context, and you had to recover the whole interview segment from that?
well, I think it was that he was talking about how he messed up with Mary J.
Hmm.
So he
Okay.
admitted that he broke up with her while he was overseas doing an interview. And he said he did it on air.
That was my next question. So he did this in the middle of an interview.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So he was on my show, and he was like, I mean, we talked about the drinking and the other stuff. And,
Mhm.
of course, they did a good interview, but we kind of talked about a lot of different things in that interview. Well, that's one thing. I do have I guess it's the social work in me,
Mhm.
that I have the ability to pull some things out of people that other
Yeah.
people may not be able to pull out.
That means you're good.
Thank you.
That's what that means. Because a lot of times, even in interviews that I conduct and the interviews that I watch, and I'll sit back and I'll watch the different formats and all the popular podcasts and stuff on YouTube. And it's your ability as a journalist and as an interviewer to make that person feel comfortable,
Hmm.
no matter what's going on with them. They can be
Hmm.
angry, pissed off,
Hmm.
mad, ready to tear the world up. They can be crying. But
Hmm.
it's how you approach that. You know that probably better than I do. But it's how
Hmm.
you approach it and how are you going to recover
Yeah.
to save the segment, get whatever that emotion is out of them, but
Hmm.
continue and get your interview as well. So
Yeah.
that to me just tells me you're good at what you do.
Yeah. Now it was. Now I'm gonna have. I do. I'm gonna share this one, and I think I actually did not air the interview. It
Mhm.
was with Frenchie from American Idol.
Yes, Frenchie Davis.
Yes.
Yes.
So I was interviewing Frenchie, and I think we were speaking about something. It was more so about what is his name? Well, he goes by her now, Bruce Jenner,
Hmm.
and Bruce Jenner receiving you know, the award for Woman of the Year.
Oh,
So
okay.
Frenchie Davis um, actually was kind. I'm gonna be. She was kind of rude.
Hmm.
So what I try to explain to people when we're interviewing is, and I probably shouldn't have said her name, huh? Probably shouldn't have said her name. But what I try to explain to people is that you want the audience to like you,
Right.
and you want them to be, because they can only hear you, they can't see you.
See you.
So
Right.
you want the interview to be relatable, and you want them to like what is going on. And so she had a song out, and she didn't want to talk about American Idol. But for the listeners, they don't know you other than American Idol.
Right.
And so I think that was it. So I'd never aired that interview because it was almost antagonistic.
Hmm.
It wasn't one that I don't think my listeners would have liked. And I
Hmm.
actually called her manager after that and said, hey, this didn't go well.
Right. And see, that was my next question. When you get to a point where you have to pull or you have to hold, not release videos, what do you do now if the station is requiring that you have something to fill in, number one, in the place of where that interview would have been? But what happens if you can't get a hold of the manager? But the next conversation you have is someone from that person's team saying, well, why didn't that interview air, or where is it, or when is it going to air? How do you handle that? Because I would imagine in those situations, all of that's coming at you as you're trying to produce your show, make sure your show stays on track.
Well, I called the person who set the interviews up with me.
Hmm.
And then I also spoke with her manager and I just said, hey, um, and the guy knew me because anybody he, had that he wanted me to interview
Hmm.
or, for promos and stuff, I was good about doing that, always worked well with him. And we always had a good connection.
Right.
Um, this somebody who managed people like Eric Nolan from the OJs.
Oh yeah.
Again, I mean, and Eric Nolan is my boo. I'm gonna say he my boo, but but that just I had to just go in and just put something else in
Right.
and just delete it and say it was a bust
Right.
and never look back.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Always maintain that professionalism.
yeah.
Now, with African American women and women in particular, really coming into their own in so many ways and so many genres, what do you think still needs to be done, or what would you like to see done in reference to women of color as far as radio is concerned?
Pay more.
Pay more?
Hey, oh
Okay.
my goodness. Radio, I don't think people realize it. I think there's a lot of perks that goes along with being in radio, but it doesn't really pay much.
Even in
Unless
major markets?
in major markets, they probably get paid really well, but in
Mhm.
some of the smaller markets or your average town, they make um and I just went to a women's conference
Mhm.
in radio when those ladies were saying, well, I make like $10 an hour in radio. So they
Wow.
unless you come on your own, and how you make the money is booking the gigs or doing the other stuff that's going to
Mm.
add. You have to
Okay.
market yourself. So
Mhm.
for women, I would say, and one of the pluses for me is I can do what I want to do. Other
Right.
people can't. You go on and you do your 16-second um, liner, and then you go on, and
Mhm.
that's pretty much what you do. So you can't go and have a whole conversation or do everything. And I'm privileged to do that. I can play
Right.
what I want to play, and I can do what I want to do.
And that's based on what? The way you came in, who brought you in, or just your seniority and being that good at doing what you do?
Yeah, I think it had a lot to do with the person who brought me in because
Mhm.
he said, you got to figure out what's going to work for you.
Okay.
And so with making it work for me, I knew I wanted to do something in relationships and give more advice
Mhm.
and just do a little bit more because I would listen to the radio and I was like, ugh, that's not what I want to hear when I listen to radio.
Mm. So is your show based on music and a set playlist? Like, is it all R&B, adult contemporary, or is it more talk, or is it a combination of rap, R&B, and a little bit of everything?
Well, it is a little bit of everything. There is some talk, some news. The music has changed because that's one of the things I say about people in radio and being able, because I know it's dictated by dollars, how
Mhm.
the music is played.
Right.
But I also think that we have an obligation to introduce different music because um, you remember when Sade's song "Soldier of Love" came out?
Absolutely. Yes. Big fan of hers.
Okay. All right. I'm not saying anything bad about Sade,
Hmm.
but that song was, when you first heard it, it was like, what is this?
Right. Because it
I
was
don't
a
know.
little different.
Yeah, it was very different.
Hmm.
But because of the money that was put behind that song,
Hmm.
you can go and drive up the road and you would listen to 3 different stations and change it, and that song would be playing on every station.
Hmm.
So then what happened? Everybody decided, I like the song
Right.
because it was in your head, even though you didn't like it.
The
Same with
programs.
Beyonce's Girls Who Run the World.
Hmm.
Everybody was like, what is this? But it played so much. So people are radio driven.
Right.
What you play on the radio, you can either tame your audience or you can go with the flow.
Right.
I decided to tame my audience and
Mm-hmm.
introduce new things to them.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, so I introduced neo soul,
Mm-hmm.
which definitely was not playing in this area.
Mm-hmm.
But then other markets in this area started picking it up.
Hmm. The bigger stations per se
Mm-hmm.
and the bigger personalities.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did that make you feel once Neo Soul exploded and it became that go-to type of music and you're hearing it on larger formats with larger personalities doing it? How did that make you feel?
I I I'm not going to say I was salty, as we say in
Mm-hmm.
Louisiana. I wasn't salty about it, but I just felt that those artists should have acknowledged the ones that were pushing their songs.
Right.
And I think that's an issue that some people don't acknowledge the smaller stations.
Right. The backbone.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Now, with that being said, the market has changed. You've been in the business over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you find that the labels still have as much involvement, maybe per se, as they used to in the artist projects and getting the artists to the smaller stations?
They overlook the smaller stations. They still
Hmm.
overlook us until it comes to a situation where they, for example, at the bigger stations, you can't touch the music.
Hmm.
The music is controlled by somebody who is up in corporate.
Right.
So you're not going to be able to control the music. And if you are one of these bigger artists, or you're an artist who was big and you're trying to get your record played somewhere,
Hmm.
it's going to be difficult unless you go through the smaller stations and people
Right.
hear it. And
Okay.
yeah, so the record companies definitely dictate, but
Hmm.
I again think they need to acknowledge the
Hmm.
smaller stations that are playing the music and breaking these artists.
You find the artists are more controlled by the record companies. Like, for instance, say a platinum selling artist or a gold selling artist. And I like your station and I like the support you've given me. But me and my management decide that we want to work with your station on a show, or if I'm in town or anytime I'm near, I can call you up and say, if you got a few minutes, I'll slide through and do an interview. Do
Hmm.
you find that's a conflict between the artists and particularly like the major labels per se?
I don't see that too much.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see that too much. Again, some of them work with us, some of them don't.
Right.
I don't see that. But I think the ones that are like, hey, you've been there for me, they'll
Hmm.
do it anyway. I can call them up and say, hey, I want to, you got a new song. What's up? And
Right.
they'll do it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Have you received any awards for being behind the mic and working radio in your career?
Mm-mm.
What about the station that you're on that you've been on?
Oh, I've received awards and other things, but not
Hmm.
for radio. No.
Okay.
No.
Got you. That's interesting. So you have a system that I remember a few years ago when satellite radio started to boom, like when technology
Mhm.
came in and everyone thought the broadcast radio would be done for.
Yeah.
You have this system that's been in place for years since the formation of rock and roll. It's
Hmm.
still surviving even with the technology boom. Where do
Hmm.
you see broadcast radio in 15 to 20 years? Because I remember 15, 20 years ago, they said with satellite radio, broadcast radio would be pushed totally out of business. It would
Yeah.
be something that would be obsolete. Where do you see broadcast radio and stations of the size and the demographic that you're at now in 15 to 20 years? You still see them around?
It's hard to say because they have to grow,
Right.
and sometimes I think they don't get the advertising dollars that the
Hmm.
bigger stations go, and even the bigger stations are making huge changes.
Hmm.
I've seen where they have let go a whole people who have been there for years,
Yeah.
and then they got one person managing four stations.
Wow.
So I see them downsizing a lot and going to automation, having one
Hmm.
person voice track for three shows versus one show. So I do see
Hmm.
that. So I think they are trying to make radio more obsolete. I don't know if it's because of the dollars, but dollars
Mhm.
make sense. You know, you got to have money to make it
Mhm.
work. Um, but I see there are so many other options because you got satellite radio.
Mhm.
You got your phone that you can just jack in what music you want to play.
Right.
So radio has to do the advertising that the other businesses do, and I don't see a lot of radio stations advertising what they do.
Mhm. At your current station, what's the demographic as far as age and as well as the amount of listeners that the station has overall?
We cover a huge range. I know at one point they were saying, and I know it's got to be more than that, 800,000 listeners for my show, I guess. Um, and the demographic is anywhere between 17 and 70. So we cover a lot of stuff. So at any given time, like I was shocked, when I came up and some teenagers like, "Oh my goodness, I love your show."
Mm.
So it's interesting always to find, but I do believe I have more mature women who listen, and then, I have some males. So pretty much
Okay. And you
big.
said 800,000 listeners.
That's what they say. That's what they say. I hadn't seen the documentation.
But that's just amazing though. That's a lot of people.
Yeah,
Like
that's what they say.
you can't look at that as, to me, I wouldn't necessarily look at that as small. I would look at it as, when you compare it to the major markets, I would look at it as intermediate and above intermediate. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Well, like I said, it covers a huge. We cover a area,
Hmm.
huge area. Even though it's like, it's not Macon, it's middle. It's more so Sandersville, Milledgeville,
Hmm.
Edenton, Warner Robins. You got those other smaller towns
Hmm.
in the other areas. So it is a lot of people, and I'm told that they keep their radio on that station all day.
Right. Right.
So they're true, and that's one of the things, they're loyal listeners.
Yeah.
So they've been there for so long.
Man, that's a beautiful thing.
Hmm.
How active does the station allow you to be, and how active are you in the communities that you have listeners in, as far as like back to school drives and things as such?
I try to be pretty active. I do have to be careful of who I side with.
Hmm.
That does make a difference. So, um, if someone calls and says, "Hey, Missy, I'd like you to come speak,"
Hmm.
I do kind of do a little research about the event and the people who are holding it, and
Right.
then I'll participate. I'm very helpful, so I
Hmm.
definitely love community events, and if it's a good cause, I'm down. So
Hmm.
it's up to me.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good though. At least that activity is going on, because with everything that's going on these days,
Hmm.
that community activism is so important.
Oh, I got a big mouth. Like I said, I can talk about some of anything. So I realize that when you have that kind of platform, you have to think about um what you say and what you do.
And how you say
Now,
it.
yeah, and how you say it. And
Hmm.
so, like, everybody, I joke a lot, but relationships are really big to me. I
Hmm.
I want to get married. So hey, if you're out there, I'm here. So I want to get married again, but I'm always speaking about relationships and how women should conduct themselves in a relationship as well as men, because men can be a little odd at times.
Hmm.
I don't know how odd you are, but men can be a little odd. Um, but I do talk a lot about relationships. I
Hmm.
talk about women doing what's right and
Right.
all of those things. But I definitely talk about community activism a whole lot.
Right.
And so my big thing is, I definitely speak out about Black men. You've seen some
Hmm.
of my posts. So I love Black men, and I definitely want to make sure they know that they're important. So,
Key word, important. And it's funny that you even speak on that, in your realm, because I feel the same way. I love Black women. I
Mm-hmm.
think the greatest thing God ever created was a black woman.
Mm-hmm.
But I think culturally, we're at a point where we always seem to have this back and forth dynamic with each other. Like,
And we shouldn't.
exactly.
We shouldn't.
But it seems like society is doing everything they can to just like destroy the black man.
Mm-hmm.
We don't communicate with our women, they don't communicate with us. And I think what makes it so bad now in the age of technology, you can even be in a relationship, a marriage, dating, living with someone or whatever. But with everything that's out there, if you're going to cheat, you're going to cheat anyway. If you're going to be unfaithful, you're going to be unfaithful anyway, which is tragic. But now, even the person that may not have considered it, when they look at all the options, you've got stuff like OnlyFans. You've got all these different
Which is
apps that
crazy.
it's bananas. It's like
So
now
crazy.
being in a relationship, you may have to make sure that you all are in great communication
Yeah.
because you can have a mate, a spouse that is involved in something online that you'll never know about.
Right.
You will
Right.
never know unless you actually, and even unless you see them literally, if you don't know the name they're using. Again, I go back to OnlyFans. You can be in a whole nother world, have a whole nother lifestyle, a whole nother existence, and your spouse will never know.
Yeah.
How would they? Your name is
Well,
not going to
I
be
think
what they know
I
you as. You know what I mean? And
but
unless somebody sees you that knows them, it's like, oh, that's so and so's husband, or that's so and so's wife. You know, it's just weird. It's a very tricky time, but I think to me, what works for us would be communication and being honest and staying honest, even when it hurts,
mm-hmm.
to preserve that honesty and that trust in that relationship.
Yeah.
You know.
We were just talking about that today. In the beginning of my show, I start off with I actually had my pastor on at the beginning of my show, and we do morning inspiration where we have conversations about things that are going on, and we actually were just talking about the situation with John Gray
Mm-hmm.
and how John Gray, had some girl that was sliding in his DM, and he's having a conversation, and then to tell people that his wife couldn't cook or she was just giving the kids pizza. And I think
Oh,
that when you get to that point where you feel that you can berate your mate to someone else, there's a problem.
oh yeah.
And I think it should never have gotten to that point where he felt comfortable enough with somebody. I don't know if he was trying to pose. People
Mm-hmm.
pose a little bit, and my relationship ain't what it was. She ain't this, just to kind
Right.
of get the person to side with you a little bit more. But
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, he should have been able to talk with his wife and say, "Hey, honey, let's make a salad. Let's maybe we can take a group cooking class for the family.
Right.
If you felt that she was only making pizza and this is all that she was, it shouldn't have went to the woman who you were emailing and texting and
Right.
everything else. That should have been a conversation with your wife.
Right.
And I think with relationships, especially Black people, we have to understand that we need each other even more.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Because again, if you look at the dynamic of the family with all the brutality and everything, I was just looking at the situation that you all have going down on now that happened in the past 24 hours in Clayton County.
Oh yeah.
And you're sitting there beating this man in front
Yeah.
of his children, and he's a
Yes.
passenger in a lift. But you're
Yes.
beating him in front of his kids,
Yes.
whoever the adult female was with him. But I'm looking more so at the children. You've got
The
that baby
children were
back and
screaming.
forth,
Yes.
screaming. You got kids in the car, and it's like, okay, what was the point of this? But I also saw right before we started taping this particular episode that officer has been fired. The sheriff fired him.
I just read that. I didn't know that he got fired, but I knew that he was suspended.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I didn't
right
know that he
before
got
we
fired.
came on, the article I saw on IG said he was fired. The sheriff fired him.
Well, but these things, and think about it, these things it's not new.
No, not at
There's
all.
police brutality has been going on for a long time
Mm-hmm.
in the African American community.
Right.
And we can go back even further and talk about the things that have happened to Black men
Mm-hmm.
that people would look at and say, oh, they're being extra about it.
Right.
So here we are now, you got more eyes on it because
Mm-hmm.
people are saying, okay, enough is enough. But
Mhm.
why are they saying enough is enough when it's always been there?
Right.
And we've been crying out saying, hey, look at this is wrong.
Hmm.
But you didn't acknowledge that it was wrong until now.
Right. Because now it's visible. Now
Hmm.
we're at all these deaths that have caused George Floyd. I mean, that was the first time you saw the entire world respond to an event.
Yes, yes, hmm,
I can't think of anything in history
yes.
that
Mhm.
caused this much outrage across the entire world,
World,
seven
yeah.
continents.
That was horrific. That was, to watch that man die on camera,
Hmm.
and the officer, and I keep saying, I was looking at the mannerisms of the officer who had his knee in his neck.
Right.
And I keep saying, and this is just me as a social worker looking at behaviors, he was getting off on that. He
Oh
was
yeah.
getting pleasure
Yeah.
uh, from taking or being in control of another person. And if he did
Mhm.
that then, what else was he doing before the cameras came up? I'm just saying with
Right.
other situations. And again, I don't think all police officers are crazy or
Hmm.
have these issues
Hmm.
with people of color. I
Hmm.
think it's a few. But
Right.
when you look at the culture of policing, we have to remember that policing wasn't created to control whites.
Right.
Policing was created to control the slaves.
Yeah.
So we
Yep.
have to understand that when you have that kind of mentality about where policing comes from, you got to start from there and formulate
Hmm.
how you police people.
And we have to have an understanding too that from that era, hunting African American people
Yes,
used to be
yes,
legal. It was a thing to do to literally hunt us. They would
yes.
have to have a license. You go back to history, you can pull up, I'm sure, online now and see different copies and variations of licenses to do
Hmm.
that.
Well, that's what they did to Mr. Ahmaud Arbery. They
Yeah.
hunted him down
Right.
in the close to Albany. They hunted him down.
Hmm.
That was, I mean, because you think he broke into a house, the
Right.
man was running, minding his business.
Hmm.
So,
Out
but
for a
again,
jog.
yeah, out for a jog. But then when they dug a little deeper into everything that went on in that particular county, you found that there were more people who were involved than you thought. They may not have been the one um, to actually shoot him, but you
Hmm.
were a part of the cover up.
Right. And that's another problem. What's your take as a journalist and as a broadcast personality on the whole Breonna Taylor situation and the delay, the evidence, taking this before the court system, etc.?
The same thing, people who don't want to step up and do what's right, because that was definitely wrong. That was a no knock warrant. They
Hmm.
they went into the wrong home.
Hmm.
Uh, the guy had, if I'm correct, he had a license to carry, correct?
Right.
The boyfriend, he had a
Yes.
license to carry and he didn't know what was going on. So the same thing, same situation in Texas where they went into this woman's house and shot her dead and she was in her own home. So
Yeah.
we're hearing of these horrific stories all the time, and there is a difference in how Black men are treated
Hmm.
and how white people are treated that are arrested.
Right.
um, it's looked at differently.
I believe so because now we have more video proof than ever. I mean,
Yes,
you've seen males in particular who are not of color, and they actually, I mean, assault, beat up,
yes.
yell,
Kill,
scream, I
kill.
mean, kill, all types of situations against the police, and yet they still remain unscathed for the most part.
Mhm.
No shots fired.
Well,
They're
they're
not
treated
losing
with
their
humanity.
lives.
They're treated with decency and respect, and then
Hmm.
the legal system works for them.
Right.
So it is, you are found guilty by a jury of your peers.
Peers. Key
But when
word.
it comes to somebody who is of color,
Hmm.
you are already tried, convicted, and hung
Mm.
without even going before a court.
Right. You're guilty from the beginning
Right. Even if it's
before
not even
anything.
true, you
Right.
are found guilty because you
Right.
are Black.
Yeah, it's a scary time between this pandemic, between the
Hmm.
way things are going, and now what we're seeing, and I'm sure you're seeing it, is the development and the establishment of. Well, let me take that back. We're seeing the appearance because they've already been developed and established. These militias that are
Yes,
armed,
yes,
you
yes.
know. So it's just a crazy time.
And it's already been there.
Hmm. Now,
Already been there.
let me ask you this question: being a music lover, being around music all your life, being in this aspect of music as far as being an on-air personality,
Hmm.
um, we are probably around the same age. We're familiar with the civil rights era. We're familiar with the Motown era.
Hmm.
But we had Motown, we had Stax, we had Chess Records,
Hmm.
and a few other labels that were
Hmm.
basically the soundtrack to that time period.
Hmm.
You really see now, whether it's through hip hop, whether it's through R&B, whether it's through gospel, whether it's through jazz, but everything that we've been dealing with the past year in 2020, do you honestly see the soundtrack of that being played or created through music like it was back then? Because I don't see it.
Okay, the only few that I'm aware of, Eric Roberson has a song
Mm-hmm.
that is canceled.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely felt that, but he's always that kind of conscious brother.
Right.
Then you have was it Anderson Paak
Mm-hmm.
who had Come Home?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm trying to think. I think Tiana Taylor did one. She did one,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't hear it like Donnie Hathaway or
Right.
any of what's going on.
Right.
You don't have that,
Right.
um, because I think people, even though some people are saying, well, I want to acknowledge and I want to stand up,
Mm-hmm.
I think some people are still trying to be safe.
I have to agree with you though. I don't see it and I don't hear it either.
Hmm.
And I think it's something even in hip hop, you don't even see like I would think that this would have been a turning point.
Mm-mm. They still too busy
For
talking about wet ass pussy.
yeah. You ain't never
that
lied.
is that is
And
that is
going
the
all the way to
song
number
that's
one
taking
with
it.
it.
Yes, that is the song that we are hearing more of in this day
Mm-hmm.
and
And I
age.
get that controversy sells, but I would have thought this would have been the time for a new Public Enemy, a new Boogie Down
Well,
Productions.
and Public Enemy
You
actually
know,
redid their song.
I know,
They
but
redid it, but it's not going to get airplay.
no,
Right.
no. Mm-mm. It's just crazy because I think that's one of the things that's missing. Like we have this upsurge right now. We have a movement. We have a
Mhm.
surge in notoriety. Our voices are being heard worldwide. It's still protests going on right now
Right.
somewhere in
But,
this
but is
country.
it black people in them protests?
Right. See, that's another thing.
Right. Is it black people in
You
them
know,
protests?
that's
Because
it.
I don't think it's us. I think it's other people protesting for the
Right.
injustice and everything else, but it's not us out
Right.
there protesting.
What do you think politically is going to happen in 2.5 months? Election day.
Well, I hope people go out and vote. I hear a lot of people saying that um, they don't want to vote, they don't think they should vote,
Hmm.
but I think we really have to push to get people to the polls. And
Right.
I just read today that San Francisco is pushing for 16 and 17-year-olds to vote.
Wow.
Yes, yes. So um, if we do that, you got 16, 17-year-olds voting and they can't drink,
Right.
but they can go
Yeah.
fight for their country at 18.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a huge step.
Mm.
Um, I just think that what people don't understand is that you have to make sure that you make the people who you elect for office
Hmm.
accountable for what they do. And
Right.
we don't do that. Uh, yeah, I'm gonna talk about it. Here in Georgia, in Macon, we had an election going on, and it was for um, a guy who was running for mayor, and he
Hmm.
was black. And I think we got to get out of the mindset that just because a person is Black, we need to vote for them.
Right.
We need to vote for people who are doing what is right. And if this guy has a history of stealing from the school board or stealing, he stole from kids.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a history of that, why would we put you in control of the whole town's money? You
Right.
know, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I think that we have to be careful of that, just putting someone in office because of the color of their skin. What
Mm-hmm.
have they done? And I kind of say that in my show, ask that office, that elected official, what have they done for you lately?
Right. But do you think that it's like we're caught in a catch-22 in that aspect? Because I understand exactly what you're saying, but the flip side of that is if you have a candidate who is not a person of color, can they really identify with our needs and our struggles in the
then,
political
then we have
process
then
and
we have
serving
to
us?
make them we have to make them understand. I have a friend who honestly believes that the Black vote is the least valued.
Mm,
And he says that it's the least value because everybody else gets something for their vote except for Black people.
understood.
So when you have people saying that and believing that, yeah, they look into a lot of different things. And so I just think we have to hold people accountable, and we can't necessarily go by the status quo of just because you're Black, I'm going to vote for you. I'm going to vote for you if you're doing what's right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take that stance. I'm not necessarily going to vote for a white person,
Mm-hmm.
but I need you to do what's right. So yeah, I'm getting tired of looking bad.
Right. Because like I said, though, it's almost like a catch-22
Mm-hmm.
because as a politician, if I'm one and I'm not of your ethnicity as a person of color and
Mm-hmm.
your vote is the minority vote,
Mm-hmm.
why should that matter to me? When I know what my agenda, particularly in local politics, you have a better idea, I would think, as a local politician of who your audience is going to be,
Mm-hmm.
who your base is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can do polls, testing, etc., and I see that my base is pretty much going to turn out and support me,
Mm-hmm.
why am I worried about a minority vote from an ethnicity that I'm not and I don't have no obligation to ties to?
Well, and I think that's why if there's somebody else, we need to start vetting people to run for office,
Mm-hmm.
vetting people who
Understood.
know what's needed in the community. We
Right.
need to start telling them, hey, I need you to work on these roads in this lower end area, because
Mm-hmm.
they don't. And those are the ones that vote the least, the ones who get more Section 8, the one who gets more public assistance. They're the least likely to vote and don't understand the laws that are being changed on them. So
Mm-hmm.
a law passed last year for public housing that you can't smoke in your house if you're on Section 8. How you gonna tell me that I can't smoke in my house?
Now, is this a local law or is this being
No,
pushed
this is Section 8
nationally then? Wow.
nationally. So there's a lot of laws that are
Huh.
coming down, and people who benefit the most are not the ones knowledgeable about it because they don't vote and don't read and
No.
don't look
Yeah.
into these things.
Yeah. Even the participants we have in the presidential election, we don't have as many people participate in the local elections.
Right. Like when the president wanted to cut food stamps and give you a box.
Yeah.
How many people actually paid attention to that
Yeah.
receive food stamps?
No, you're right. You're absolutely
Right.
right there. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing. So with every road that you've traveled, and we're getting ready to wrap up here shortly,
Okay.
and I appreciate your time. I really do. Um, you said you still see broadcast radio to a degree around a few years down the road. What is your take on the changes that have occurred over the past 15 to 20 years with the music industry,
Mm-hmm.
where CDs are basically obsolete,
Yes.
streaming is basically, being done, but the artists are basically making little to nothing off of it, even if they own their music. What do
Right.
you see as the future of the business of music in a full 360-degree circle? That's releases, tours, record companies being able to survive, radio stations surviving. What do you see for as far as this entire culture of music is concerned?
Mm. Ooh, that's a deep question. Deep. I For the past 15 years, we have seen a huge change,
Hmm.
more um, removing live bands, removing live artists and live music.
Hmm.
We have more people who are auto-tuned and can't sing when they go to a concert, but we're flocking and, flocking there. Um, the concerts, and I know this year, and I look forward to concert season every year.
Right.
And this year, because of Corona, it has cut back tremendously
Hmm.
on how we see people, and even with uh, Facebook having cutting back on artists performing. I don't know if you're aware of that. October the 1st, there's going to be some changes on Facebook in regards to artists and performing.
Really?
Yeah, there's going to be some changes. So
And
a
that's
lot of people,
across the board. It doesn't matter if you're a major artist or up and coming artist. It's just period.
yeah, yeah, they have the right to block it. So a couple of managers have actually called me and talked to me about that, and I read part of the article this morning, and it's still very vague. But for artists, they're going to have to find their way and figure out how to get their music out, whatever platform. I just think that we have to control it even more. For the
Hmm.
artists to get paid, they have to have more control in the market. Um, they might have to go back to what E40, not E40, what Percy Miller,
Master P.
Master P. They
Hmm.
might have to go back to selling it out the trunk of their car. A lot of independent artists, that's what they do. They still have CDs. They still do all of that stuff. They go to these shows. They sell their
Hmm.
things. They cater to the people who follow them, and it might have to be more of that.
Well, the interesting thing is for me personally, particularly running this label and relaunching it and building it brick by brick as we're doing to actually get it back to what it was and beyond. I would welcome CDs back, but that's just me.
Mhm. I like CDs, and I think people love to have something they can hold on to. I think that's
Hmm.
the other thing. But artists also have to invest more in themselves.
Right.
That's something I try to tell up and coming artists all the time,
Hmm.
because um, everybody thinks if I put your song on the radio, you're going to be big. It's
Hmm.
not like it was back in the day.
Right.
There are ways to get your record played, but there's also ways for you to break your record if you're interested in doing it. You
Hmm.
got to invest in yourself,
Right.
and you got to go around what the typical um, arrangements are. You have to go around that if you want your record broke.
Hmm.
And look for people who are willing to, play good music.
Right.
Trust those people.
Hmm. But I guess you got to build a relationship with them in order
Hmm.
to start to trust them because of several issues and things that
Oh
have gone
yeah.
on the radio in the past, and
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Plenty of scams. I know a lot
Hmm.
of people bought cars, houses off of, what they did. And here I am, I'm the good girl, and people
I
overlook
understand.
at times. Yeah.
Believe me, I understand because I
Mhm.
look at the money over the years that I've spent, and there's a
Mhm.
lot of scammers out there.
Yes, it
You
is.
know, so you have to do
Yeah.
your research. Who's been an inspiration in the field of radio to you,
Um,
as far as
I know
on-air personalities?
besides on air personalities.
No, as far as on-air personalities.
Okay. Um, I listen a lot to I'm a put Steve Harvey out there.
Okay.
I think that I think that he's an inspiration, Ricky Smiley. I
Mm-hmm.
do want to get to that level if I can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I do think that we have to open up for other people to get there. Tom Joyner and all those, they cornered the market.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for people like me who would like to be syndicated,
Right.
um, just got to figure out, is it the right person going to work with me to put me on that level?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder about that, but who knows?
So the goal eventually is to be syndicated.
I would love to be syndicated, have a television show, have all that other stuff. Again,
Mm-hmm.
who knows? There's a lot of opportunities for women, even more if they just want to make it.
Right. We know it's not going to be easy, but it's
No,
definitely the time of the people say the year. I say it's looking like it's going to be the decade of, and probably the century of
the woman.
women. And I'm
Mhm.
proud of all of our sisters. I just hope they keep doing what they're doing.
I want them to definitely think about how they affect other people,
Right.
because I think that was the turning point for me when a lady came up to me and said, "My daughter listens to you all the time." And she was telling me that her daughter was playing with her dolls and was like, "Missy E said," and Missy E said. So I realized that when you have this platform and you have this voice, you have to really think about what you say and what you're putting out there in the atmosphere.
Right. Okay. Let everybody know where they can hear you, find you on social media, find you on your broadcasts, etc., so they know to tune in.
Yeah. I am Missy E, the party doll. I'm here in Georgia, in the Middle Georgia area. You can find me 10 to 6 every Monday through Saturday. My social media outlets are Facebook, Missy E. Johnson. I got in trouble by Facebook, so I couldn't be Missy E. Party Doll anymore. I'm Missy Party Doll on Instagram and Missy Party Doll on Twitter. So that's how you can find me. You can, if y'all want to send music or you want to kind of just hit me up and say, "Hey, I want you to, let's check out this track." You can always send me an email at missye.partydoll@gmail.com.
Well, Missy, we definitely thank you. We'll definitely be in touch. And anything else I have, I'm trying to put some things together probably by the end of the year, maybe for New Year's or Thanksgiving.
Okay.
We'll definitely talk radio wise and everything else. And just keep it moving. We'll definitely be working together one way or another.
Well, thank you guys. This is I'm gonna throw this interview everywhere. Everybody,
hey, please do, because we're a new podcast. Like I said, I'm trying to relaunch this label and take us into different, things that are going on now. And the podcast is everybody has one, but we're trying to actually do something a little different with ours.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys. Like I said, this is my first major interview. I don't get interviewed often, but thank you.
You're welcome. And I got a feeling that's going to change.
Oh,
you definitely got what it takes, and I see you doing things.
Well, thank you. Appreciate you guys.
You're welcome. But you have a good night.
You too. I gotta watch my shows tonight. They done took P Valley off.